Heading down to the mouth of the Capilano down to Ambleside, thinking of some flies to try and chuck. Well, I got a pattern for you today I like to call cap food. Alright, so to tie this little coho bug, I've got an Ahrex SA220 streamer hook in a size 10 fixed into my vise here. I'll typically tie this in a size 10, size 8, or if you're fishing in water that's got a little bit of color to it, which we can get, you know, if there's any runoff or anything like that, then I'll just even size it up to a 6 sometimes. But primarily for, you know, like the mouth of the cap, for example, water stays fairly clear there. I find a smaller size to be a little bit more effective for this pattern. For thread, use whatever you like. I'm a big uni thread guy. 6/0 in the color white. And I'm just going to tie that in right behind the eye. And lay down a little bit of a base. For my tail, I'm going to use some Hedron polar flash. Well, let's see if we can get that to show up on the camera. And this is going to be Opal Mirage for a color. I'm going to take a small clump and tie that in for a tail. Now, if you like, you can add a bead to this fly to help it sink a little bit. I would keep it on the smaller side. I find on a lot of our local beaches, the water's fairly shallow, especially if you're fishing on a lower tide. Then if you get too heavy of a fly, you'll hang it up on the bottom. These fish are looking up. They're generally not looking down in the rocks to try and find these patterns, and I find it's a little bit more effective. I fish a lot of unweighted stuff. I find that these heavier saltwater hooks are generally enough weight, especially if you're using like a slow sinking poly leader. But there are instances where having a couple of weighted ones in the box would definitely be a good idea. Trim off the excess there. And now, just for durability purposes, I'm just going to take a little bit of UTC Ultra Wire, small in silver. And you can play with colors with the wire if you like, by all means, to make that rib stand out a little bit, like in pinks, Chartreuse, that sort of thing would look really good in this fly. Tie in some wire. And I'm just going to take a few more strands of the tail material, and we're going to use this for a body, or just to wrap over the body. Secure that down. Couple of wraps in front just to help lock it all in. And we'll trim off the excess there. Now, like I said, just for durability purposes, we'll counter rib this with that ultra wire. If you're going to take the effort to tie this fly, might as well make it last a few fish. Helicopter off that wire. Now, for a little bit of a wing, I'm just going to take some unique fly fishing polar bear in orange. You can play with other colors for this fly as well too, and you can even mix colors. I'm doing an orange variation. I really like fishing orange for coho off the beaches. Works very well for me. Other common colors that I'll tie this in, Chartreuse is another real big one. You can mix some white in there with the orange or with the Chartreuse if you want, just to make it a little bit more subtle. Blue is another good option. Pink is another good one to have. So feel free to mess around with the colors and just to see what the fish like on any given day. I'm going to take some of the longer strands and just kind of push them back a little bit just to make it a little bit more uniform and fairly sparse with this guy. Pick out a little bit of that finer under fur. We don't need a lot there. And if there's a few pieces extending past the hook bend, that's just fine. I don't want a big, crazy, thick, heavy wing or anything like that for this fly. I find generally for those fish sitting in the estuary, especially like the mouth of the cap, less is definitely more in most instances. Trim those butts nice and flush. And I'm just going to do a wrap or two underneath that wing just to kind of help prop it up a little bit. Now for a collar, I'm just going to take some Wapsi strung Rooster Hackle. This is going to be orange. And I don't want anything crazy long. I'm going to tie this in closer to the tip. Push that stem back a little bit, trim it flush. And I'm just going to stroke those fibers back as I palmer. We got one wrap. Let's do 2 wraps. And that's plenty there. Now I'm just going to kind of push that hackle back. Not that it won't happen when you're fishing it a little bit, but I just want to sweep it back a little bit just for aesthetics. Looks nicer in the box. Nicer the fly looks in the box, the more likely I am to tie it on. Quick whip finish. Caught one fiber there. Second whip for good luck. Give it a coat with your favorite head cement or UV cure, and that one's ready to fish. So like I said, I'll typically fish a pattern like this with a you can use a full floating line, but I really like, I should have brought one for the camera, but about a 10-foot intermediate polyleader off the end of my floating line. I quite commonly will fish, or I shouldn't say quite commonly, I almost always fish a Rio Outbound is my favorite beach line personally. Something that it's an easy line to cast. It punches into the wind very, very well, and if you do any beach fishing, wind can definitely be an issue. So that's a line that I like, and I'll put a 10-foot airflow polyleader on the end of that, an clear intermediate polyleader, just to help get that leader down a little bit underneath the wave chop, and just get that fly in front of those fish. So like I said, super effective fly. Mess around with the colors a little bit, and as far as retrieves go, I mean, there's a variety of retrieves that a coho will take on any given day. They like something moving fast. You see guys out there chucking lures and stuff like that with a fairly decent retrieve, and those fish aren't afraid to chase those things down. Other days they want just a real slow, steady strip. So play with it a little bit and let the fish tell you what they want. The hardest part is remembering once you get that fish in, how was I retrieving that fly? Especially if you just change it out for something really from something really quick to something a little more subtle. So mess around with it. Very effective fly, one I think that you'll like. And yeah, I'll have all the materials linked below. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you like these videos, and check us out online, www.c-run.com. Thanks for watching, everybody.